Hello, everyone. My name's Ellis Johnson, and I'm coming back to you for my third Thursday night preview on the True North Fantasy Football Network. Now, we are forgetting last week completely. I don't want to talk about it. There's a lot of things I'd rather do. I'd rather watch Wet Paint, Dry Paint, Sharknado 3D. I'd probably rather watch Nathan Peterman and Josh Rosen try to attempt to play beer pong. I don't even know what there's so many things I'd rather do. So let's move on to the next week. The only good thing that came out of last week is I'm excited for this matchup of the Washington Commanders as they travel to the Windy City to take on the Chicago Bears. Now, we did all right with our picks last game, but let's jump right into the fantasy football of this. First, let's break down the injuries here. Now, unfortunately, we have two pretty big injuries here on the Washington side, especially when on the offense. First one would be Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson, he missed last week. He's having a great rookie campaign. Fact is, though, he's going to miss this week too. He's already ruled out. The other one is Logan Thomas, one of the sneaky best tight ends in the game. However, he's also ruled out. He was a game time decision last week. I thought he had a chance to play. Turns out he doesn't. Those are our big injuries. Now, let's jump into our must starts. First and foremost, these two must starts I got for this week aren't necessarily as solid must starts as they have been in the past, but based on this matchup, this is what we got. The first one's David Montgomery. There's not many backs, especially who are only 25 years old, who are getting the work. And the best part is he came back after Herbert looked great against some bad defenses, and he got all the touches once again. Herbert last week only went 4 rushes for 11 yards, where David Montgomery put up a nice over 80 total yards, and he scored his first touchdown of the year too. Montgomery is a volume play. The issue here is Washington's been solid against the run. However, Montgomery's averaging 12.5 fantasy points a game, and the Commanders are still 20th against the running back position. So even though they've been solid in real life, fantasy-wise, it's been allowing some decent games, and I think Montgomery's going to have a solid one. Lock him in your lineup as a low-end mid RB2 this week. The other must-start I got is Terry McLaurin. Now, Terry McLaurin hasn't been having a great season. A lot of that has to do with Jahan Dotson, who scored 4 touchdowns. But even last week when Dotson was gone, we saw Dammy Brown have some deep balls. And the issue here is Curtis Samuel's also been a volume hog at the position. The good news, though, is Wentz has been hucking. And Terry's been getting enough work that I think is a very safe play. Chicago has been solid against the pass. They are allowing the 10th fewest fantasy points per game to receivers. And they're also allowing the 4th fewest passing touchdowns a game. I don't think Terry is going to have a huge game. However, I'd probably start him over like Brandon Cooks, for example. And I'd rather take the steadiness of him over the Devonta Smith, who's taken on the really great Cowboys secondary this week. Now, that's it for the must starts. Let's jump right into the solid starts. Solid starts doesn't get much more solid than this. Talking rock solid, volume hog, Curtis Samuel. On his resurgence season, he's had no fewer than 7 targets a game so far. He's rock steady. He's not a lot of upside, but if you're playing any form of PPR, he's your guy. You can lock him in, and you just know you're going to get a very safe play with a chance of an explosive play because he is quite shifty and fast. Speaking of shifty and fast, Darnell Mooney has had a very disappointing year this year, but it's not really on him. Fields has not been passing a lot. Fields is averaging 8 completions a game, and that is horrific. So the thing is here is lately, the last 2 weeks, Fields has kind of picked it up. And Mooney, in relation to that, has had 146 yards combined in the last 2 weeks. He's looking like he's starting to pick it up, and when Fields throws, he is the main guy. I have him here as a solid start, but it's more because, hey, if you're rostering him and you're not going to start him this week, you might as well not have him on your roster. Get him off of that. I think he's going to have a very solid week. So I'd plug him in. If you're ever time to do it, now's the time. Now, on to our flex considerations. Flex considerations is shockingly the biggest part we got in this matchup. The biggest one being Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, do you know he's a QB9 on the season? I sure as heck didn't know that. And the fact is he's also second in passing attempts behind Kyler Murray. But the thing is he has been hucking. Now, yes, him hucking led to a game-losing interception on the final play of the game last week. However, he has been supporting a decent amount of fantasy points to the receivers and for himself. So for that reason, he's a low-end super flex QB2. However, you never know. The Bears defense hasn't been amazing. They've been quite middle of the pack. If you're desperate, you might as well play him. He's a good pivot from if you're relying on Goff, for example, and Goff's on the bye. Now, you can do worse at the super flex when the QB2 spot. And doing worse, another one is Justin Fields, speaking of. So Fields, though, to be fair to him, he has started to pick it up. He has 10 and 15 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks, respectively. And the thing is with that is he's starting to throw more, just like I said when I was talking about Darnell Mooney. He's not amazing, but he has some rushing floor, and the Washington defense has been torched in the air. If there's ever a game for Fields to start passing a bit more, this is the one, and I think he might do it. I don't think he's great, but I wouldn't mind starting him in a super flex once again as that second QB if you're in a pinch. Now, one of my favorite players in the league right now, and I think he's everyone's favorite player, Brian Robinson.
Many men wish death upon me. Blood in my dog and I can't see.
Made his debut last week after getting shot exactly 6 weeks ago, right before the NFL season. And even better than that, he just walked out to the song that I just played in the background there, which is one of the most badass things I've ever seen on the NFL field. What's more important, though, is he had 9 rushing attempts to Antonio Gibson's 3. Outside the 2 of them, no other running back had a rushing attempt on that team. Therefore, it's looking like we're changing the guard, just like we heard all offseason. It's Brian Robinson's backfield, and I think that's going to pick up. In fact, I don't care that he averaged an abysmal 2.4 yards per carry last week. It's his first week back. I think this team loves him. I love him. I think the fans love him. I think they're going to try to get him in the end zone. And I'm calling for the pie shop to be open for the first time in his career this week. And I see him getting a touchdown. So, risky play. But I'm telling you, I think that he's going to get the volume, and I think it's really going to show this week. And I'm predicting a solid game for him. Outside of that, J.D. McKissic, it's kind of the opposite. Not very risky, not very high upside. He's very safe. Full PPR especially, start him in your flex. However, if you're an underdog in your matchup, he doesn't offer a lot of upside. I'd look somewhere else. But if you're a favorite, hell yeah, plug him in and just see and lock in that 8, 7, 6 points he's going to get and just be happy with it. Now, the sits column, I kind of combined a whole bunch, and it's the Bears pass catchers. I'm talking Equanimeous St. Brown, Ellis Jones Jr., Amir Smith-Marset, and Cole Kmet. Now, I know Kmet did have 40 yards last week, but these 4, there's not enough volume to go around. You can't start them in any format, and I wouldn't even be taking DFS shots. I'd rather look at Diami Brown on the Washington side of things. The other sits I got is Khalil Herbert. Now, I know this might be obvious with Montgomery coming back, but because some managers have a huge crush on him, for example, my friend Zach, and they just love the guy and they think he's better than Montgomery, but the fact is he's just his backup for now. Maybe if Montgomery doesn't re-sign, it'll be different. And he does look great, but the thing is, it's 4 for 11. It's Montgomery's backfield. You can't touch him. Similarly, you can't touch Antonio Gibson. You had a little bit of a last ride with him. It was really nice. But the thing is, Brian Robinson's back, and he's looking like the guy. I wouldn't start him, and maybe it's more of a 50-50 than I suspect. But the thing is, we need to see that first. There's no way you can start him. B-Rob's going to be the main guy, I think. And if not, then it's just a 3-headed monster, and you don't want any part of that. Boom. Crushing the fantasy right there. Let's move on to the Ellis's picks. Last week, we finally hit on an over-under pick. However, and what a garbage game it was. I thought the Broncos were going to win it. Hell, I thought the Broncos were going to win it going into overtime too. They didn't, but that's okay. So we're 1-1 on that week. But I'm really confident in this one. What's interesting about this week is we have a pick 'em. It's a straight-up pick 'em from these two teams. Vegas has them, even odds. And I'm going to go with the home team that's been playing really good in football. And the thing is they almost beat a division rival, Minnesota Vikings. Honestly, they should have won. It's Minnesota Vikings had another last-second comeback. It's not pretty. It's kind of like the Giants. It's kind of like the Cowboys. But Chicago's playing gross football that seems to work. Carson Wentz is not clutch, and I don't trust that at all. However, I do like how much Carson Wentz passes. And I do think the Chicago defense, I think the run game is going to get going. And I do see Fields finally airing it out a little bit more, which isn't saying a lot than he has previously. So I'm thinking it's going to be a sneaky over here. I'm going to go over 37.5. I've seen it 37.5 and seen it 38 some other places. It's taking the over on both and give me Chicago. And flashback, Brian Robinson's getting in the end zone. And just like that, we're done this week. I'll catch you next week when we have the New Orleans Saints traveling to the desert to take on the Cardinals. And we finally get a nice couple of fun teams in the mix. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy your football. I'll see you next week.
Walking on down the street, my pretty baby kissed another. Stop my dad up on my feet.